Welcome to another Blender shader tutorial. In this video I will show you how to create such a clean or broken hologram shader in Blender. Let's get started. At first I want a bit more geometry, so I add a subdivision surface modifier on level 2 to the object and apply it. Then open the shader editor and create a new shader. Enable the render preview to see what you're doing here. I am currently in Eevee. I want to create many horizontal lines, so I add a wave texture node with a mapping and texture coordinate connected. Connect that to the alpha plug of the principled BSDF. Don't forget to switch the axis to Z to get horizontal lines. You can't see anything yet, because in Eevee you have to enable alpha values manually in the Materials tab. Now I have many horizontal lines, which I can remap a bit with a color ramp. I want to animate this shader, so I have to bring the timeline in this shader. For that I just create a value node and type in the slider #frame. Now this value is always the current frame. Connect that to the distortion of the wave texture. This means if I play the timeline, this value will increase 24 values per second. When we now add a math node on sine after that, the distortion value will oscillate between 1 and -1. With a math multiply in between, you can adjust the intensity of the oscillating distortion. Furthermore, I want these animated lines now to move constantly upwards. For this, I need to keep decreasing the phase offset value of the wave texture. To achieve that, I just plug the frames node to the phase offset with a math divide of a negative value in between. And now we got the main motion we want to have on a hologram. You can adjust the emission color a bit or add a bloom effect if you're in Eevee to increase the glow effect intensity of the lines. Now we're going to make the second part of this shader, which is an emphasis on the rim of the object. For that we need a Fresnel node, which displays the angle of the face in relation to the camera. And we should shade the object smooth for that. We want to have a Fresnel value of roughly 0.9. And it looks a bit broken now, because in Eevee we see the background faces too. Disable that in the Material tab. Then you can adjust the intensity of that mask with a math multiply node after the Fresnel. And then another math multiply node to multiply this value with the color output from the line pattern we made before. Now we got our hologram line pattern emphasized on the rim areas of the object. And it is still animated when we play the timeline. Now we're going to make the third part of the hologram shader, which are errors and distortions. But when you wanted to make a perfectly clean hologram, you are finished at this point. The first error we will make are horizontal gaps in the picture. We'll do that with another wave texture node on the Z-axis. The scale is not that important because we're going to animate that anyway in a minute. After that, add a color ramp to control the gradient a bit. In front of the wave texture, we will use another mapping and texture coordinate node, where we need the generated plug. Then we just copy the sine and math nodes from the top and connect them between the frames node and the scale of the texture. With the multiply, you can control the size of the error gaps. Now with these nodes, we just created an oscillating error gap scale from -1 to 1 with a multiplier attached. Alright, we're almost finished. The last thing I want to add is a displacement to distort the whole geometry, that it looks like it traveled through the universe and got disturbed a bit. The downside of this is it's only doable in cycles. It can be done in Eevee too, but only with geometry nodes or something, and not in the shader like here. So if you want this distortion effect, you have to use cycles if you want to make it in the shader itself. Okay, let's go. Just copy the divide node and connect it to the frames node. I will just add a reroute point for the connections to keep it a bit tidy. That's not necessary. Then connect that to another wave texture node in the phase offset plug. Put the axis on Z as well and add a mapping and a texture coordinate node in front. We'll use again the generated plug. Now we will use this animated mask as displacement value. For that, add a displacement node and plug the wave texture in the height. Plug the displacement node in the displacement output of the shader. Then it is not yet displaced because you have to activate the displacement manually in the Material tab. Maybe you have to switch Blender to Experimental for that. Alright, now my geometry exploded and I have to adjust the displacement amount with the scale value. Now it is displaced in every direction at the same time, which looks a bit like water waves. Maybe you like that, but I want a distortion on only one axis, like on a broken TV. So I just connect a combine XYZ node in between, that the displacement only happens on the x-axis in this case. You have to increase the scale a bit to make this effect more visible. But after the adjustment you have the distortion effect on the geometry. And now you are really finished and have a nicely distorted broken hologram where you can barely see anything. Congratulations! If this was helpful to you, feel free to subscribe to my channel to see more videos like this. Have fun hologramming and see you soon.